get the sheet.
So hopefully it wasn't as bad.
I just went to the bathroom. The Tamiflu.
We'll call the meeting to order and welcome everyone here this evening. First, I would like to call forward Madison Jones to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Next is approval of the agenda, and I would like to add under recognitions, item 3, I would like to recognize the scout troop that's with us.
Motion to approve.
With changes?
With changes.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor? And the motion carries. Thank you. For those of you that are not here on a regular basis, welcome, and I hope you come again. Each month we recognize a student and teacher from one of the local public schools, and it is selected by the school system. They are selected by the school system. So I wanted to recognize the two recipients. Madison Jones, who led us in the Pledge of Allegiance, excuse me, was selected for recognition for being an overall outstanding student. She works hard in the classroom to maintain excellent grades and is respectful to staff members. Madison is a role model for other students by standing out as a leader and volunteering for school-wide events. She has been a participant in the Student Ambassadors Program, which provides school tours to prospective students and families. Madison also participates in Zebulon Middle School as a Zebulon Middle School cheerleader, student council member, history fair team member, and is active on the yearbook staff. She was inducted into the National Junior Honor Society last year. Madison, thank you. Come forward. Thank you. Is Melissa McDonald here?
Should Rose go to the podium and make her presentation?
Hey, how are you? Okay, maybe I won't get tongue twisted this time. I'll see if I can do a better job of that. Melissa McDonald is the Zebulon Gifted and Talented Magnet Middle School Teacher Spotlight for February. Ms. McDonald began her tenure at Zebulon Middle School in 2017, and she is in her 17th year of teaching. She is originally a native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She's married and the proud parent of 2 daughters and 2 stepsons. Teaching has always been her top career choice as long as she can remember. Due to her hard work and leadership, she is now the grade level chair for grade 6. Ms. McDonald holds her students to high expectations, and she works tirelessly to ensure that every student has what they need to be successful in her classroom. Ms. McDonald is a forward thinker and positive-minded. Her extraordinary leadership helps move her team and the school forward every single day. Ms. McDonald is also one of the 6th grade social studies science teachers for the Zebulon Middle School, and is always finding cool and exciting ways to help students learn the content. Science is her favorite subject, thanks to her 7th grade teacher, and so naturally that is what she enjoys teaching the most. She constantly models collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity at Zebulon Middle School. Without a doubt, Ms. McDonald is a shining star in the East at Zebulon Middle School. One of her favorite quotes is, "I never teach my pupils. I only attempt to provide the conditions in which they can learn." And she took that from Albert Einstein. So thank you. Okay, I'd also like to recognize the scouts that we have with us today. They're working on their citizenship badge, and they're from Troop 524 at the Zebulon Baptist Church, so I would ask y'all just to stand and be recognized. Welcome. Thank you for coming. Okay, we have, Eric, do you want to introduce your guest? Oh, I'm sorry, wait a minute. I got public comment. We had no one. Okay, thank you. Now you can do it.
If you ever had someone who didn't need an introduction, Rose is one of those people. She's the Executive Director of Government and Public Affairs for the League of Municipalities and says grace over all of the legislative action and communication strategies, not to mention she's a member of the senior leadership team of the League. Before that, she was identified as the most influential lobbyist in the General Assembly when she was legislative counsel to the North Carolina Department of Insurance. So we've got a real advocate and a friend in the League in Rose Williams. Before that, she was a clerk to Justice John Webb on the North Carolina Supreme Court, and at one point for 11 years in her career, she was in private practice, primarily in Goldsboro. Is that right, Rose? Where she was mentored by William A. Deese Jr., and I don't know if y'all are familiar with Bill Deese or not, but he was one of the greatest lawyers in North Carolina of the World War II generation. He was deeply involved in the consolidation of the University of North Carolina university system and was the first chairman of the Board of Trustees of the consolidated system. And he was involved in shaping the law in North Carolina along with some of the greats like Governor Terry Sanford, Judge Dixon Phillips, and Chancellor Bill Aycock. And that's who showed Rose the way. So if you get a mentor and a teacher like that to help you start off, you know, the rest, I guess, should be expected. So Rose is doing great. We're so proud to have her here. And she's going to talk to us today about some of the things we should expect from the legislature. Rose?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Eric Helmuth. Thank you very much, Mayor Matheny, members of the board. Thank you all for inviting me here tonight. It really does, I'm going to look at my time just to make sure I don't go over. It touches my heart. It really was wonderful to practice law with William Deese, and I appreciate so much, Eric, you recognizing that. And I'm reminded, as a young lawyer, having a trial that didn't go the way I would have hoped it went, and my client went to prison. I was very young. It's one of my first cases, and I was coming in, nobody knew how I felt about it, I guess. He just knew. He met me in the parking lot the next morning, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Rose, you made a mistake in your case yesterday." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what?" And he said, "It was your client who got convicted, not you." Because I was mighty down about it. I had done my best, but the facts were really, really bad. But I am glad to be here. It's a pleasure to represent you. I'm very proud of my client, which is the cities and towns of the state of North Carolina. We represent every city and town in the state. And as you know better than anyone, the League does a lot of things. We collect debts for cities and towns, whether your water bills or parking tickets and that kind of, or parking meters and parking that are overdue. We have a preferred partners program, and I know you all participate in some of those programs where some of the cities, by participating all together with these companies, we get better prices. We provide training for cities and towns, police officers, and how to drive safely, how to tase safely, how to do community policing, how to serve without violence and try to keep the peace. We do safety inspections just in general, just to make sure your city is safe, to help you prepare for an OSHA inspection or just in general. And I think some pictures I see from some of our staff coming in are pretty important. And one that sticks in mind is a water fountain out in a park that had a live wire going through it. And so our employee just stayed on site and would not leave until the city got that fixed. And when you see the picture, you can see children playing out in the background. So that's what we want, to try to help and keep people safe. We have human resources consultants on staff. As you know, that's a big liability for any employer. We want to make the right decisions. We want to do things right. So we want to help on the front end before things can go wrong. We have legal staff on council within our organization as well, might answer questions from your lawyer. We file appellate briefs on behalf of cities and towns as decided by our board. The City of Carthage case in the past couple of years was one of those cases that you may be very familiar with, where we had substantial liability for cities and towns had that not gone the way it did. We also don't represent cities and towns before the United States Supreme Court, but we hire lawyers who do that on your behalf when it's appropriate. And I think that case that was down at the beach a few years ago, you might have read about, where the couple had decided that they owned the property all the way to the water. That's a property rights case that wasn't just about beach property, that was about all property. Very important, and we participated in that case, and that's when I learned I should have become a United States Supreme Court lawyer because they make a lot of money. It was very expensive, I guess is my point. We also do research, a salary survey, revenue reports, how much tax money is coming in for cities in general so that you can do your budgeting throughout the year. In the last year, we also participated on behalf of cities in the Duke rate case, 2 rate cases, 2 of them actually, all across the state, which did result in millions of dollars of savings for cities and towns across the state. And that was hiring outside counsel. We also lobby. And that's why I'm here today. We're following actions in the General Assembly, what's going on to affect cities and towns. And a lot of being prepared for that is knowing who's in the legislature and what does this mean and what's on their minds. And as you know, we had an election in 2018 in which every single seat in the General Assembly was challenged, and that's unusual. In the last election in 2016, about half of them weren't challenged. And after the primary, we already knew those people had the final seat. There was no general seat opposition. So the point is here, as we go into this session, we have a lot of new people serving. Close to half of the House are either what we call freshmen or sophomores. Maybe they're in only their second term, and same thing in the Senate. These are a lot of new people. And so we're working very hard, and city council members and mayors across the state are working very hard to get to know their new members, because city issues aren't always obvious when you see a bill. You may not know, you may not know if you were just reading it and weren't involved in the work of a city every day, how that bill affects cities and towns. And so that's the job we have, is to try to educate and to say how that's going to come down to the city. You may not have known, the legislator may not have known the cost that that's going to put on the city. For example, you've heard a lot about the election. Was it a blue wave, a rainbow wave, a pink wave? What kind of wave was it? The writers for North Carolina are saying it's an urban wave, because primarily you see a lot of those changes in Wake County and Mecklenburg County. However, when you go down a little bit and you look at those areas surrounding those urban areas, those seats did not flip, but the elections in those areas were quite close. So we don't know if that'll continue or not. Are we going to have to continue to know more new people or not? Just what's going to happen as these next 2 years come up. So I'm just going to look through my notes and make sure I don't forget anything. One thing that we always like to keep a lookout for is who in the legislature has municipal experience. And so we love it when former municipal servants run for office in the legislature, because who has a better understanding of what's facing cities and towns than those who have served? And we have a good number of those, including some freshmen. We have a former Wilmington mayor, former Fayetteville City Council member, a Shelby mayor. We have the former Greenville City Council member and Mayor Candy Smith, a LaGrange City Council member, Chris Humphrey, a Winston-Salem City Council member who served on our board, Derwin Montgomery, and also a Charlotte City Council member, who've all been elected. We have formed in the past couple of years a municipal caucus, and this is, of course, it has to be done by the legislators, where they can get together and have a meeting on their own to talk about the issues and how they affect cities and what their goals are as bills go through and how they affect cities and towns. And so that's very important. What's going on right now is that the legislature is setting their committees, and the big deal there is who are the committee chairs going to be. And we've had some changes there, and that's significant. Who's going to be chairman of finance and appropriations, for example? What's going to be on their minds as they go through? Understanding and thinking about what's on their minds is important, I know Zebulon has goals that you wish to accomplish in the legislature. All cities and towns do. When you think about what's on the legislator's mind, we know that Medicaid expansion is going to be taking up a lot of air in the room and a lot of thought and debate. This session, we know that they're going to have to deal with redistricting. We have 2 redistricting cases going on right now, one for the state legislative districts and one for the congressional districts. They're still outstanding. We know disaster relief is going to be a big deal. They are going to have to appropriate money across the state for disaster recovery that still needs to be attended to. Teacher pay, the opioid crisis continues, and I've already been asked to meet with the judicial chair already to talk about that and something that she has in mind. So our members all gathered, about 250 from around the state at the end of November to adopt their goals for the next legislative biennium, the next 2 years. And this is a statewide process that started months ago. We had almost 100 goals proposed from cities and towns all over the state, and they were good. There was nothing that you wouldn't want. However, if we go with 91 goals for cities and towns, obviously if we don't have any priorities, we won't get anything. And so we have legislative action committees, you're all welcome to join and serve, who spent hours and hours going through those, trying to winnow them down, trying to wordsmith and make it so it would be as clear as it could be and represent what it ought to represent. And then those goals went to this full conference at the end of November, and our members voted. And they were going to vote on 15, but we had some ties. We have 17 goals, and I'll leave you with a copy of those. But a lot of those are needs for appropriations. Cities and towns, of course, unlike counties, cities and towns have to pay for the maintenance of roads within your district, as you know. And those POW bill funds, as they're called, haven't been increased in a number of years. So when you look at the increased cost of construction, that's actually a decrease in the money that cities and towns get. And so we know that those funds need to be increased, and monies for parks and recreation, safety grants, economic incentives. The historic tax credit is set to expire in 2020, January 2020, so this is the session for that to be continued if it can. Transportation is significant. Broadband is a very big deal. You hear all around the state. Even in urban areas, there are pockets that don't have service or don't have good service. We know it's essential for our schools, it's essential for medical care, it's essential for business. It's an economic development tool. And the fact is, it's just not profitable sometimes for the big companies to come in and go to a more rural area in particular where things are more spread out. It's much more costly to connect as things are spread out than it is when a more tightly knit city is all close together and to connect there. So we, along with the North Carolina County Commissioners Association and a number of other associations, have this as a major goal. But we're not just saying broadband, broadband, broadband for everybody. We have a very specific ask for broadband, and that is laws that have been passed have really prohibited cities from building this infrastructure. Cities and towns are not asking to run your HBO or run the cable service. They want to simply say, if we have this dark fiber in the ground, we want to be able to lease it to a private provider. And it could be any provider who wants to come. It could be the biggest, it could be the smallest. We just want you to come and do business here. Cities and towns worry that there's some grants they can't even take from Golden Leaf or whatever to be able to do this. Cities and towns have built infrastructure in this country and in this state for years. It's what cities and towns do. And we see it kind of like the electrification of the country. It's that necessary, and it must be there, whether you're rich or poor or wherever you live. We feel like everyone is entitled to that. So enough about broadband. I've talked a lot about that, but it's obviously an important goal for cities and towns. We have a lot of cities and towns who are in financial distress in the state, and I think you're going to hear about some of that this session. You might have heard of some of that coming out of the Treasurer's Office recently, some counties as well. And what we have in rural parts of the state are cities and towns who in the years past had mills, had businesses, who've now gone away, population that's gone away and moved to the bigger cities. And yet those cities are left running their water system, running all the infrastructure they have. And so that's something we're going to have to work on, because as our population continues to grow, everyone needs to be successful and everyone needs to be able to live and thrive in their town. You're going to hear about ABC privatization this session. And our members adopted as a goal that they're not getting in the middle of the privatization fight. whether to privatize or not. But what they do want is to have some control over where these outlets selling liquor and spirits would go. Would it go next to the Scout Hut? Would it go next to a preschool? And they want to be able to get the funding that they still get from the ABC system. Billboards, that bill is going to come up again with your help and the help of cities and towns around the state. We defeated that bill in the last long session, and that was a huge, huge win, but they're going to be back. There's no res judicata in the legislature. It can all come back anytime. You never finish. And so they'll be back. And basically, the last time the bill was up, they wanted to be able to put a billboard anywhere they wanted. The billboard companies did. And it could look like anything they wanted. So it could be metal and electronic. It could be on the side of buildings. It could be like the ones you see in New York City. And North Carolina cities didn't want that where we are. Small cell application fees is kind of a nuance, but there was a law passed in the last long session limiting your authority. So you have broadband, which is in the ground. That's fiber that's going to last for years and years and be hooking up to all kinds of technology. Wireless technology is just what it says, wireless technology. And so in the bigger cities especially, they have this new technology to put, the technical term I would use is doodads, up so that there could be better connectivity in between tall buildings, in football stadiums or whatnot. And we agreed on a price that cities could charge. They now, of course, want to charge more for that, so you'll be hearing about that. Firefighters want to have a new pension benefit that would allow them to retire early and collect this extra pension benefit until they reach Social Security retirement age. And we all support our firefighters very, very, very much. And as someone who worked in a building that burned in the downtown Raleigh fire, especially have that close to home. However, what we ask is that it not be an unfunded mandate on cities. This is estimated present value by the nonpartisan fiscal staff at the General Assembly to be about $300 million a year. Winston-Salem hired an actuary to look at what it would cost them, and it'd be about $1 million a year. So it's a very significant cost. So our members adopted as a goal. We don't want this unless it comes with a funding source. What else? Friday, the local government employees retirement system run by the Treasurer's Office met. And of course, you have representatives on that board as well. What happened is the actuaries for the treasurer have looked at what employers, like cities, have been paying toward the pension benefits. And cities have agreed to be paying over the past years increasingly more and more and more and more. And the reason they agreed to that is at least they knew what was coming. They could budget. They would know what to expect. And that makes all the difference in the world than all the fluctuations. However, the actuarial firm said, you know what, looking at what the investment returns were last year and other matters, the amount of money is no longer sufficient. We need to change that policy, and we need to increase the cost of cities and towns and what they're contributing, and other local government employers, over the next 5 years, and it is substantial. So we're talking in 4 years under this plan, and if these numbers stay the same, it would be almost a 13% increase. So this obviously is not sustainable. The Treasurer has talked in the past about pension reform, and our members have adopted as a goal that they want to keep our defined benefit system, and they want it to be fully funded. But his reforms that he talked about were maybe raising the retirement age, maybe increasing or decreasing the multipliers for employees. He's not talking about doing that this session. I don't think he's going to do that. As you've read, he has a bigger fight going on, trying to keep the costs down for the state health plan. And that's causing this fight with the hospitals and the doctors on their reimbursement rates. So my point is, if there's not pension reform and things don't change, that's going to keep getting higher. But anyway, that's a downer. What can I leave on that would be an upper? Just that. How is this all going to be done? And it's obviously not going to be done just by me and the two great lawyers on my staff and our contract lobbyist, who's the former House Speaker Harold Brubaker and his team. There's no way. I think the last long session we had over 300 bills that affected cities and towns, over 60 of which we deemed critical. The way we work and the successes we've had, and I've mentioned billboards, we're from our cities and towns, and the relationships you have with your legislators. And we try to encourage that, and part of it is having this town and state dinner, and I know some of you are coming at the end of the month, to be able to sit down and eat dinner with your legislator and have a chance to really talk about issues. At the end of the day, instead of being stuck in the middle of the legislative day, when committees can be called, a caucus can get called, and you've driven to Raleigh and taken off from your life and your work for nothing. So that's how it's done. It's also done mainly just by being informed. There is a bulletin that goes out in my name every week that a lot of people work on. You don't have to read the whole thing. If you don't get it, let me know. But if you do get it, just skim it, skim it, skim it. You don't have time for all that, but if there is something valuable, I want you to be able to get it. If there's somebody in the city you think you need to pass it off to that person. But I do encourage you to follow that, and we'll also have on our website all the bills that we're tracking so that you can know. And I think with that, I will stop and answer any questions that I can, and I'll leave with Lisa a copy of all of the goals that were adopted by our members. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Does anyone have any questions? I guess we know it all.
Was it too fast? That's my fire hose presentation. Thank you so much for inviting me and for your interest. It's always a pleasure to come to Zebulon, and I appreciate Mayor Matheny, all your work you've done with the League Board and these years and years you've given of service. Your understanding, I love watching you with legislators. It's just wonderful, and we're very grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have to say, I was and still am involved with the league, but I'm a short timer. Come May, I will be off the board, but I served 8 years on the board, and it was a real pleasure working with Rose and your staff. So thank you so much for what you do. Okay. I meant to explain that our video system is down, so I apologize for that, but normally the folks, she had a PowerPoint, and normally you see it here, but it's sick, and we just don't have it. But I wanted you to know as a normal thing we do, so thank you. The next item then is our consent agenda.
I make a motion, we approve our consent agenda.
Second. Motion made and second, all in favor? And motion carries. Okay, next, old business, we have fire. Chris, I believe you made it.
Yes, sir. Thank you for allowing me to slide in at the last possible minute. You have in front of you tonight for your consideration 2 items which are amendments to our fire contract with Wake County. From time to time, projects come up that are not specifically addressed within our contract. So they ask for contract amendments, at least to bridge us over to 2020, I believe, is when our contract will be renewed. So this kind of bridges us over to those upcoming new contract. The first one for your consideration tonight is for funding for mobile data terminals. The county, along with the city of Raleigh, is implementing a new computer-aided dispatch system, somewhere north of $8 million worth of technology that is being paid for by the county. A part of that, although it not only includes fire vehicles, it includes EMS vehicles, police vehicles. There's quite an enhancement on the side of the fire vehicles that we will be installing computers in every vehicle. Currently, we have computers in 5 of the 10 vehicles. But the county has a desire that all the equipment be the same for repair, for purchasing, for just a lot of reasons operationally that does. So what they have asked us to do is the county would use general fund money to purchase all of the equipment, including the mounting equipment and the installation and support of that equipment. All we would be doing would be paying for our share when that equipment needed to be replaced, which we would typically do that anyway. Most of the stuff we purchase, we share the cost. So this just enables them to buy the equipment with no cost share for us until at some point, typically it's anticipated it'll be about 4 years, but they'll know better when they see how the equipment performs and lives. But That's what the contract amendment does, is provides for them to purchase it initially, and then we would assist with cost share when it came due for replacement. And I'll answer any questions you may have.
Question? I have one, Chris. I'm not against this, so don't misunderstand me. But
Sure.
it's almost like writing a blank check. Do you have any predictions as to what this would cost?
So it's about the port that they're paying for is about $28,000 in equipment. So what we're doing is we're anticipating that at a 4-year, knowing that we typically won't have to buy new mounts. We don't have to buy, but worst case scenario would be in 4 years, we would owe about $28,000 would be that would be our share of the cost. So the cost is about around $50,000 for the equipment in its entirety.
$50,000 for the equipment that we have.
That's correct, that they will be purchasing for us.
Each municipality has a different number.
Based on the number of vehicles, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the board? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the amendment to the fire contract with Wake County on mobile data terminals. Second.
Motion made and second. Any questions or comments? All in favor? And the motion carries. Thank you. Floor is yours again, Chris.
All right, the second item is one you may seem familiar to you. Starting in fiscal years 2016-17, we began offering medical exams for our firefighters. Every firefighter goes through a fit-for-duty exam that is paid for through the cost share arrangement we have with Wake County. They have chosen not to do that as a blanket, but to do it as a year-to-year. So the contract amendment that you see here will take us through this fiscal year, just like the one that you approved last year for the exact same purpose. They do not want to do multi-year because each year as they do their budget, they decide whether or not they want to do physical exams. We hope they will continue. We think it's a very, very good program. But this enables us to do those physical exams, and then the county will reimburse us for their portion of the costs.
Okay. Question? Is there a motion on the amendment?
Sure, I'll make a second on the motion to approve the amendment to the fire contract with Wake County on medical exams. Second.
Motion made and second. Other comments or discussion? All in favor? And motion carries. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for your time.
All right, we have utility merger negotiations. Joe, yep, there you go.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. In 2006, the town of Zebulon and the city of Raleigh merged water and wastewater systems through a utility merger agreement. And that agreement described the structure Zebulon would follow to retire the debt associated with the merger. Generally, the debt repayment structure relied both on a combination of new customer growth as well as increasing rates paid by existing customers. And through a series of events, one being the recession in 2009, one being a change in plumbing profession of having more efficient plumbing fixtures, as well as water conservation measures adopted by water and wastewater users. And then finally, as Ms. Williams pointed out, how the General Assembly can have an effect on you. The General Assembly passed legislation prohibiting the town of Zebulon from collecting utility impact fees from new development. So the culmination of all these things effectively resulted in your existing ratepayers paying more and more fees. One way to bring the rates down in line with the city of Raleigh is to pay off the debt sooner. And so at their work session on December 19th of this previous year, the board heard options to accelerate the merger debt payoff. These options include selling back water capacity and to a lesser extent selling any potential stream restoration or wetland credits that might come about from a Little River stream restoration project. The discussion at that work session centered on how much water capacity could be sold back to Raleigh while still retaining sufficient capacity to meet Zebulon's growth and sustainability goals. So the discussion before the board tonight is whether they want to open negotiations with the city of Raleigh to amend the utility merger agreement. And we stand prepared to answer any questions you may have.
Question? I will say, not really a question, Joe, but yes, we need to talk to them. I'd like to see some options, though.
Sure.
Brought to us, so, and I know you just brought up two there. There may be others.
That's right.
And you and I have had this conversation together, so, but that's all I had to say. I think the citizens would appreciate it. I just want to be sure we have enough water. Is there a motion?
Oh, I got a question.
Sorry, question. Go ahead. Sure.
Just follow up on what the mayor was talking about in relation to, well, the two items that you presented right there as far as what we're negotiating with. I again would like to see some type of explanation as to why we would give up water rights on the Little River Dam from the negotiations.
Okay. Well, two things. First of all, we'll circle back because we'll need your approval on a change to the agreement because you all are the signatories of that agreement. The rights to the dam, it's not necessarily rights to the dam. Yeah. It's if there's any stream restoration work done out there and we get wetland restoration credits from the federal government, City of Raleigh may be interested in that.
Right.
They may not be interested in it when they see if they see the value of the credits. It's also assuming that we get any credits. That's also assuming we even do any work out there. But it's something that they put out on the table as a way to have an option to buy down the debt.
I understand.
All right, as I understand it, if we sell back the water to them, then we still have an opportunity if we need it in the future to buy back the water supply. Is that correct?
We would, and that's an important detail for us to bring back to the board to consider. The question is going to be how much they would sell back and at what price.
Well, and also the funding of it, because it's an enterprise fund that we don't have. So, it would, you know, and I know we'd have to come out of tax dollars at that point because there's not another revenue source, but as most of you know, utility systems are supposed to be self-supporting. So it gets twisted.
Yeah, it's not straightforward.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's extremely important that we find some way to pay off this thing as soon as possible because I think the cost of water in the town is getting it to the point where it's prohibitive almost.
Other comments? Is there a motion?
I make a motion we adopt resolution 2019-17.
Second. Motion made and second. Now, are there any other comments or discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you, Joe. I guess you're up next.
I am, and I'm going to have Charles Archie of Wyrick Robbins join me since he was so key in drafting this agreement that's before you. The town of, the town of Zebulon leased property at 529 East Horton Street, known at that time as the sewage disposal property, to American Tower on June 13th, 1995. And I think Mr. Horton's name may have been on that lease. I'm not sure. I think I recall seeing his name. But the lease offered an initial term of 5 years with options to extend 4 additional 5-year terms. The last of these extensions expires February 29th, 2020. So the board may enter into a proposed amendment to this lease by following the process described in the North Carolina General Statutes. In general, this is the upset bid process. It's the process that you followed for selling off some properties downtown. The process begins by the board resolving to accept an initial bid. The town then publishes a notice of the bid and invites any third party to upset that bid pursuant to the instructions in the said notice, which is attached in your agenda packet. So that drives to the discussion point for the board tonight, which is whether they are interested in amending the lease according to the terms set forth within the lease that's in your packet. If the board's not interested, the board takes no action and allows the current lease to simply expire. If the board is interested, they adopt the attached resolution. And we, Charles and myself, are available for any questions you may have. Did you want to add anything?
Good evening. One revision to your bid packet that we received after your agenda was finalized was a detail. It's a revision to the exhibit that describes the property. American Tower, the tenant, had a more recent survey done of their box of land. And a document that I'd like to pass up to you that is won't make any sense to you. It's a what's called a meets and bounds description of the box of land that they're leasing from the town. They've asked that they use this more accurate description of the property in lieu of what was attached to the lease in 1995. So I'd like to pass that up to you just as a more complete record of what you're contemplating tonight.
Okay.
Sure.
Charles.
Does anyone have any questions with regards to the cell tower lease? I got about halfway through it and fell asleep. I assume this is fairly boilerplate for tower leases.
Yes, sir. These are fairly standard and typical terms to be included in a ground lease, a cell tower ground lease.
There's nothing unusual that you would point out to us?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, what's your pleasure, folks?
I'll make a motion we adopt resolution 2019-18.
Second?
Motion made and second. Other comments or questions? All in favor? And thank you very much. Motion passes. Thank y'all. Planning, E.C. Daniel, local historic landmark. Who in the world is there?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. You have before you tonight consideration to designate the E.C. Daniels House as a local historic landmark. It is currently located at 205 East Sycamore Street. On March the 6th of 2017, the town rejoined the local Wake County Historic Preservation Program by adopting an interlocal agreement. That interlocal agreement is what actually allows you to move forward with the designation of local historic landmarks. They may include structures, architecture, archaeological findings, cultural significance, and they have to be recognized by you, by the official designation of their importance. As a result, an updated architectural survey for Zebulon's corporate limits and extraterritorial jurisdiction has been performed. Potentially, it has been recognized that this property at the time was available for historic designation and meriting additional research. By meriting it needs additional research, at that time MDM Consultants submitted an application. They went forward and did their study, and they have submitted that, and it was approved and recognized at the November 20th Wake County Historic Preservation Commission. It was unanimously recommended and has been received. The North Carolina Department of Cultural Resources determined the following property is also eligible as a historic landmark designation. The discussion before the board this evening is whether to continue consideration of this property as a local historic landmark. In doing so, if you choose to move forward, we would ask that you adopt the resolution that you have before you this evening to hold a public hearing on March the 4th of 2019. As part of the policy analysis, and you're seeing the local historic landmark designation and its importance to the community. It is one tool to meet the vibrant downtown and small town goals identified in Zebulon's 2030 historic plan. Specifically, revitalize houses adjacent to downtown, both promote the residency required to support vibrant commercial activities and events downtown, and protect the walkability and connectedness associated with small town life communities. Again, this is very important as you move and as you change, and all the growth that you're seeing is that you keep these local historic landmarks and recognize them and keep them precious to you to keep that character of the community. The physical analysis that has to take place as a part of this would look at also the impact that it has on the property itself as well as that to the town of Zebulon. What you will see before you is that it gives the opportunity for a deferred tax assessment to those properties that are designated local historic landmarks. At 205 East Sycamore, currently, and this would be just to the town, the amount would be $1,228.12. Once it's voted into standing as a local historic landmark, that would be changed, and that amount would be reduced to $614.06. So we ask you tonight, the consideration has been recognized by Wake County, also by the state of North Carolina, and before you tonight for consideration to move forward and schedule a public hearing for March the 4th of 2019.
Thank you, Teresa. Other questions or comments? Okay, is there a motion?
I make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2019-21.
Second.
Motion made and second. Other comments or discussion? All in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. All right, Public Works.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Tonight we come before you to discuss whether the board wants to move forward with the construction of the equipment shed at the Public Works facility. We received bids on December 18th. We received bids from D.W. Ward. You may recall D.W. Ward was our contractor at the Zebulon Community Center. Muter Construction, who is a local GC here and has done work for us at Five County Stadium. Engineering Construction Company, who specializes in metal buildings. These bids range from $220,000 to $316,000. In an effort to try to keep this project cost down, staff has done a significant amount of work on site. We removed the existing perimeter fence. We've done some clearing of some trees and vegetation along that fence line, and we constructed a building pad consisting of about 300 tons of material. This building pad has been tested and certified by Geotechnologies to be suitable for construction of a metal building shed. Tonight, if you decide to move forward with this project, we ask you to adopt Ordinance 2019-19. This ordinance moves money from savings from the Town Hall GFC project. It moves money from the police station masonry project at $31,600. It appropriates $39,415 from Capital Reserve, which is savings from previous projects that we have constructed. And it also appropriates $55,860 from general fund balance. If the board decides not to move forward with this project and reject bids, they'll need to adopt Resolution 2019-19. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Maybe in here, Chris, I'd have to thumb back through, but
yes, sir.
How close were the bids?
How close were the bids? The low bid was $220,000. The highest bid was almost $316,000. So we have approximately about a $98,000 spread in bids.
How many bids?
3 bids.
3. Just curious whether they were close or not, you know.
The second bid, the low bid was D.W. Ward at $220,000. The next lowest bid was Muter Construction at $269,000. So about approximately $40,000 more, $49,000 more.
Chris, let me. There's a whole lot of difference between what we figured it would be and what it turned out to be. Now, where was the difference, and how
Yes,
come
sir.
the difference?
Yes, sir. clearly, the bids did come up higher than what we had estimated. Contribute a lot of that to the tight construction market. Right now, it's very difficult to get bidders to even bid on jobs. We're also seeing significant increases in copper, concrete, and metal. I just received a price quote increase that was sent out from ST Wooten the other day about concrete prices rising $10 a cubic yard. I think the tariff issues that we're going through on the national economy is adversely affecting us. I think there's a labor shortage going on right now, finding skilled labor. And so contractors are having to pay more for that laborage. One of the engineers that I've been talking to kind of gave us something like this, that contractors are picking and choosing jobs right now. And in the past, they've been trying to recoup some of their losses during the recession, but right now, they're actually profit taking. And they don't unforesee that to change in the next year to 2 years with the steady economy in Wake County and all the growth going on and the amount of work on the street. So it's one of those things that we're going to have to do a better job of putting bid estimates together. One of the things we may try to do is to work with higher contingencies. We also may try to design projects in 1 year on bigger projects, and then have a better idea once the job is fully designed what the cost is going to be. But there's still going to be quite a bit of uncertainty in this market with the demand. Give you an example, engineers shared with me with Wake County Facility Design. Last year, at the courthouse, they renovated a floor at a time. They've been doing it over time. They put an estimate together that the bid for the next floor was $2 million. They just finished the floor. So they felt like they had good estimates, put a CPI on it. And the following bid they got the next year was $1 million higher on a $2 million project. It's just, the market is really, I guess it's just unstable at this time. There's a lot of demand for work. And so, you know, it leads to prices being higher, unfortunately. So.
My two thoughts on this are that, number one, I can't see why the building that we're looking at would cost that much. And number two, I don't think those bidding evidently wanted to do it to start with, so they just put a high price on the thing. So, and that's to do with the market. And I know they're trying to recover from bad times and that type of thing. But,
I will share with you, DW Ward has reached out to us about what we are planning to do here. They are interested in moving forward with this project, so they're waiting for some feedback from us. So they are looking forward to working on this project and working with us again if we decide to move forward.
So this project actually started as a shelter.
It started as a three-sided shelter that we were looking to put in. When we got to looking closer with our architect about where we wanted to place it and make sure the building would be north side facing to keep the wind and weather off of it. I think even Mr. Baumgartner mentioned at that meeting we might be a good idea to put roll-down doors or be able to come back and do that in the future. When we talked to our architect about expanding our public works facility, in regards to down the road, where we placed it would be in conflict with that expansion, so we had to move the location. And once we moved the location, we could no longer get the back of the building facing north. So we had to go in and put roll-up doors there. And some of the preliminary numbers we'd got from after making that change from the architect that we still should come in the budget, but it was going to be tight. Clearly, we did not expect this significant increase. You know, basically doubling of our construction budget.
Chris.
Yes, sir.
What's the purpose of this building?
Basically, the purpose of this building is to reduce the cramped space that we have now. The current maintenance building we have was constructed in 1987. When we have emergency events as far as snowstorms, hurricanes, or extremely cold weather, we try to get a lot of our building equipment inside the buildings to be protected. We also experience during really cold snaps where we like to get a lot of our equipment such as a leaf truck and knuckle boom inside to keep the temperatures up to prevent us having the delays and letting that truck warm up and hydraulic fluid warm up so the arms can swing and go out and grab. So basically it adds capacity to us for storage. It helps eliminate some safety issues that we have there, trying to get everything in, and it gives us a little more flexibility as we maintain vehicles on our site.
Yeah, I was just, why I asked you that, I was reading basic structure
Yes, sir.
with no utilities.
Yes, we have basically.
So actually, it's a shelter, and so I mean, if you're talking about, you know, so stuff won't freeze, and you're not having any heat or.
The building
That's
will,
what
the building will have insulation in it. We just will not have radiant heat like we have in the other shop. We also are not going to be able to have a bathroom, or so we don't have those utilities. But just keeping it out of the weather, keeping it an insulated building will keep it up above probably in the 40 to 50 degree area, which is sufficient for the trucks. We don't need them in a 70-degree building. Our existing shop thermostats are set on 50. So our goal is just to maintain above freezing, stop stuff that we haven't stored, like the vac trailer, the ramjet, and sweeper, which have water on board, from not freezing.
Is this the same building that we had the bids go out on?
Sir?
The same building that we were talking about before? I mean,
It is
you're talking about these changes and everything because of the location and so forth.
Well, the building is basically the same size, same structure, material. The only thing we have changed is the addition of doors and the metal facade across the front to accommodate the doors. Everything else is exactly the same.
Is there an option for a different construction methodology? I know that for example, I'm pricing a metal building for my house in Virginia, and I know that I can get stick built, and it's a big shelter for a whole lot less than what the metal is, and probably have.
Yeah, privately, I've seen stuff advertised at a similar square footing for much less, sir. You're correct, but the statutes that we have to follow for public bidding and stuff require us to put it out, that bid, instead of working with one individual.
Well, I realize
I'm trying to answer your question about wood built or metal built. I don't feel comfortable at this time. Can give you a defined answer on that one. I don't have enough data to support one way or the other. Typically, pre-engineered buildings are cheaper than stick-built buildings.
How long do we have to respond to these bids?
Basically, the bids were good for 60 days, and so we have to technically to February 18th. So basically, we need to make a decision tonight.
Well, the options to approve it, disapprove it, or go back to the drawing board. By disapproving it, you're going back to the drawing board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to approve it, you approve the ordinance.
We don't have the option of tabling, is what I'm saying.
That is correct, sir. And if you want to reject it, it will be adopting a resolution, so.
I understand. All right, folks. What you want to do?
I personally think we ought to go back to the drawing boards myself.
Make that a motion.
Which one is that, 20?
That'd be the resolution, sir.
2019-19.
2019-19.
Yes, sir. Resolution, not.
The resolution?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make that as a motion then.
For a second.
Second.
Other comments or discussion? All in favor? The motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Joe, UDO committee?
Yes, sir. The Unified Development Ordinance, also you'll hear it referred to quite often as the UDO, will contain the rules that control how land can be used and what kind of uses may be located in particular locations and how development must be configured within the town of Zebulon. A draft of the UDO was compiled with input from a stakeholder committee, which included developers and builders and designers, and 7 focus groups concentrated on businesses and property owners downtown, specifically for developers, specifically for businesses. We went out to civic clubs, churches, just a generic citizens group, and we even had a youth group, focus group. After the culmination of all that, we presented the first module of the UDO, which are the administrative chapters, and they were initially presented to the board at their November 2018 work session, and then were subsequently discussed at their January 2019 work session. It was during this later work session that the Board of Commissioners also discussed methods to expedite the review process as an alternative to continue to process the review of the UDO through your work session schedule and format that involves the full board. So the board appeared to reached consensus at that work session on developing a subcommittee from within the governing board of their membership as an alternate way to review and develop the UDO. So the discussion before the board tonight is whether there is interest in developing a UDO subcommittee. If there is interest, they will adopt the attached resolution and meeting schedule with the understanding this action will also elevate the meeting frequency of their planning board. If there is no interest, they will just continue to utilize their work session schedule and format to review and develop the UDO. We stand available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions? We pretty well discussed this, I think. I don't expect.
Well, I'll make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2019-20.
Okay.
Second.
All right, other comments or discussion? All in favor? And the motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, vision statement. I had been asked by several members of the board to pursue the Little River Park with the county, and I worked with, hold on, I'll give you all the names. I worked with a lady by the name of Leanne Hammerbacher, who is Associate Director of Conservation with the Triangle Land Conservancy, Chuck Rowe, who is President of Southern Conservation Partners, and he also serves on the Wake County Open Space and Parks Committee, and Sid Baines, who is retired from North Carolina Wildlife Natural Resources. He was Chief of the Division of Conservation Education. And we toured the parks. This corridor is a corridor. It's more than just the park, Little River Park. You see maps in here. It reaches from almost, well, up around 401, going north on 96, all the way down basically to the county line. So it includes Little River Park. It includes all of the land currently being held for Little River Reservoir and some of the land outside of that. It also includes the Tarpley Mill, which is jointly owned by the town of Zebulon and the town of Wendell. Virginia Gray of Wendell is enthusiastically supportive of this. She's carrying it to her board to ask the same that I'm asking of you, and that is to adopt this vision statement, which allows us to move forward in good faith. I mean, obviously, this is not the deal. It's just like, okay, we're really interested in this. We're supportive of pursuing it, and we'd like to move forward. So I will entertain any questions that you might have. In this mix, then, is the possibility of FEMA money. So, Joe, would you update us as to where we are on that?
Yeah, the update is that there is no update. We're required to provide a monthly report to them, so we dutifully do that, but we don't have an update, so we don't have an understanding of where we stand as far as any FEMA funds.
Okay. All right. Again, I'll try to answer any questions if you have them. Otherwise, I would ask that you adopt this vision statement.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the vision statement for Little River Corridor in Wake County, North Carolina.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. You got 2 seconds, so that's fine. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? And the motion carries. Thank you, and I really hope this gets all of us pulling on the same end of the road, because we've got something to work with here and try to move forward with this project. So I thank you for that, and I will keep you informed as we do move forward. Board comments. Dale, start with you.
I don't have anything.
No, sir. Okay, neither do I. Manager's report.
All right, it wouldn't be a manager's report without giving the Friday movie update. So the family movie night movie this week, or this Friday, is Paddington 2. So come on down to the community center at 7 o'clock. Popcorn is free.
Well, that was quick. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
In a second? We adjourn.
I thought I had more.
I'm sorry.
You doing better?